There we go. It's people. Yeah, perfect. There's some people. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a flag today. Pretty much a good start. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dave, your name's down for invocation.
Yep.
Theme of our invocation today is thankfulness. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We also give thanks and praise you for your love, your faithfulness, patience, mercy, and grace. That list could go on and on. We also give thanks for Rotary, the fellowship we enjoy, and the opportunity to put service above self. Father, inspire us and challenge us to use our gifts to touch lives that need your presence. Use us to represent your kingdom and be in the midst of everything we do and say. We also ask you to bless this meal and those that prepared it. We pray in your precious name. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. While we're standing, let's recite the Rotary four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. I just have a few announcements today. Does anyone else have announcements to make? Gary, you're welcome to come.
Just real quick, Rotary Foundation meeting after today's club meeting.
Okay. Rotary Foundation will meet right after this meeting. I put a sheet on your tables. You're welcome to take it, and I have more if you want them. I just am watching this calendar fill up in June, so I wanted to provide a little synopsis so people have the information they need to block time on their calendars. First of all, this coming Thursday, May 15th, we're going to help downtown Clinton with their cleanup efforts. I have a clipboard that's starting to circulate. We do have a handful of Rotarians already signed up, so thank you for that. If you're interested, we are meeting on 5th Avenue South in front of Zirkelbach, starting at 1:30. I know I can't get there till about 3 o'clock, but they said anytime 1:30 to 6 is our time slot. That's one of those, if you have gardening gloves, certainly wear them or bring any tools, but downtown Clinton will also provide some of the tools needed. So clean up, helping with some light landscaping, no heavy machinery, but hopefully we get a day like today. So that's Thursday, May 15th. And then the rest of the dates are June dates, just to have on your radar. We'll have sign up and RSVP information coming out later, but we have our Rotary Night at the Showboat on June 13th. Saturday, this is for your radar, Saturday, June 21st, Marcia Thrall and I will be at the Lions Farmers Market. That's a continuation of the food security initiative. So we're going to give out some of the leftover tote bags. We have canvas tote bags. We'll also take just club membership information. So just have a little Rotary table out at the farmers market. Come by and see us, or if you want to help, you can reach out to one of us. And then the last two items on this little half sheet are both gavel passings. Our club gavel passing will be Thursday night, June 26th at the Lumber Kings. Handing it over to you, Andy, so get ready. And then our district governor gavel passing is that Saturday the 28th. So Norland Hinkey will be accepting the gavel. So anyway, more details to follow on those. I had a note I wanted to share today. It was a request from Kathy Klon. She said she's noticing that there are some new members in Rotary, and so let's just, as a reminder, make sure to introduce yourself. It is hard sometimes to put the names with faces. I think we do a good job of mixing it up at the different tables and make sure you sit with people you don't know. But just a reminder, especially for newer Rotarians, some of our corporate memberships, they're bringing, different people in a given week, our student guests, etc. So let's just make sure we're introducing ourselves. Otherwise, I'll make you all stand up and do it in front of the whole room. All right. Finally, I want to share, this was a message from District 6000. Says they're thrilled that there has been a huge uptick in applications to RILA. So they got a ton of RILA applications this year. They haven't seen these numbers since before the pandemic. So everyone's really excited about having the high number of student participants, but that means they need more Rotarians to help. So each team at the camp, needs a Rotarian volunteer. Blah, 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 I'm reading from this memo. It's Grinnell College from Saturday, July 26th till Friday, August 1st. So it's that last week of July. The team leader Rotarian training session will be at Grinnell on June 28th. So you go a month ahead of time to find out what you're going to do. And then there's a debrief meeting after that. So if you are a Rotarian who's interested in mentoring and leading some of those camp counselors, reach out to me, or there's RILA information at the district. The district contacts are Jane Schlegel and Pat Englander, if anyone knows those folks. Otherwise, we can help you get connected if you're interested. Right. Any other announcements? Andrew Kita. Oh, sorry. Savannah.
I just want to let everyone know we finished the Mount St. Clair Scholarship. We have this week to name those recipients. So you'll see some information on the National Bank's website. We had 174 applicants this year, which is like the most we've ever had, or like so super a lot of applicants. 241,000. So we'll know Friday.
Awesome. Sounds like the students are getting their applications in. That's great. All right. Time for fellowship.
And calm yourselves. Sheesh. Okay, do we have the slip of guests? Is that okay? Thanks, Susan. Let's talk about birthdays today first. We'll wait for the guest list. Braden's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, Braden. You gotta start getting some salt and pepper in that beard, brother. You can catch up. You've got a long way to go. Gary DeLacy, is he here today? No, he's probably out drinking because today's his birthday. And Mary Beth is coming up on May 24th. Great. And anniversaries this year, Mary Beth will be 3 years on May 23rd, and Mary Swanson will be 26 years, or was 26 years on May 3rd. So great. Brig, you have a guest.
My pleasure to introduce my daughter, Mia. She's home for the summer. She just completed her freshman year at Cornell. She's working at the bank.
We totally could not tell that was your daughter. Totally not. We have a couple of high school students. Where are they located? Kids, who's Wes? You want to take care of the kids, or you just want to make them do it on their own? All right.
I'm Abby Lorenzen, and I'm a junior at the high school. I'm in Carson. I'm Haley House. I'm also a junior at the high school, and I'm also part of Rotary.
Wow. Great. Welcome to our guests. We need to raise some money. So, I always say May is a great month to do fellowship because you got all these great holidays. Well, I didn't do Mother's Day because everybody does that. That's low-hanging fruit. So today is May 12th. And we have a bunch of weird days that this date is named after, or they've got special events going on that day. So May 12th is National Odometer Day. All right, Joe, here's the question for your table. Which brand of vehicle has the highest average odometer reading at 274,223, and it's multiple choice? Is it A, Toyota, B, Land Rover, C, Mercedes-Benz, or D, Volkswagen? That's wrong. It's Land Rover. Land Rover. Brig, your table. It is National Limerick Day. May 12th is National Limerick Day. There once was a man from Nantucket. No, we're not doing that. That would be inappropriate for this crowd. It celebrates an English artist, illustrator, author, and poet who lived from 1812 to 1888. In 1846, he authored the Book of Nonsense, which is where limericks come from. Who is this person?
Your distant relative.
No. Any guesses?
It's not multiple choice for this one?
No.
Everybody knows car brand name.
Toss out a name. Got nothing? His name is Edwin Lear. Very funny guy. $5 anyway. Maybe it don't matter. Shannon, your table. This may be easy for you. Today is VSAC Day. May 12th is VSAC Day, celebrating this religious founder's birth. What is VSAC more commonly known as, which recognizes this religion's founding?
Birthdays here too.
Yep. VSAC Day. Nothing?
Christian Scientist.
No, it's Buddha Day.
Oh.
Today is Buddha Day.
What does VSAC mean?
Yeah.
That's just the term for the day. If I had said National Buddha Day, you would know the answer. Gary, your table. My table. Whatever. It's International Nurses Day. Where does the University of Iowa rank amongst the Big Ten schools for nursing schools? So there's 18 schools in the Big Ten now, because Big Ten don't mean 10. Where does Iowa rank in nursing schools in the Big Ten? Number 1. Absolutely number 1. Sheriff Greenwalt, your table. Today is also National Nutty Fudge Day. National Nutty Fudge Day. Is the percentage of population which has a nut allergy higher or lower than 3%? Higher or lower than 3% for nut allergies?
One higher.
It is 1.6%. All that stuff that we do with nut allergies, 1.6%. There you go. Here's the last question I had on here. Anybody can toss that out. May 13th, tomorrow is National Apple Pie Day, and you should know this because I asked this question last year. What country is credited with creating the apple pie? Anyone?
Oh, Germany.
It is English. Remember that because it might rear its ugly head next year. Thank you all very much. Money in the pot.
Thank you, Andrew. We're all a little bit wiser.
I don't know about that.
And trivial things, I suppose. All right, Dale and Mary are in charge of this month's program, so we'll have Dale Dalton come up and introduce our speaker.
First of all, I want to thank and wish all of the young ladies in this room belated Happy Mother's Day. I hope you were all spoiled and treated very well. I did get into trouble with my wife, but you know, that's just me. It's my pleasure to introduce Sheriff Bill Greenwalt. He's been a long time, forever native of Clinton. with, served on the Clinton Police Force for 30 years. Married to a wonderful young lady, has 2 beautiful daughters. And without further ado, Bill?
Well, I'd just like to start by echoing Dale's comments. Happy belated, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers here in the audience. And I just want to thank everybody for having me and actually putting up with my speech. I'm going to try. And how long? You never did tell me how long, Dale. Not that I need to work at it. 2 to 3 hours. You'd be out of here by 3 o'clock. Perfect. Anyway, Dale had asked me to come up and talk, and I actually look forward to this every year. It's just a different group of people that I get a chance to come and explain what we do at the sheriff's office. And as Dale said, I'm very, very fortunate. Got an amazing wife and 2 amazing daughters, and it's kind of a funny story. Both my daughters are out of the house right now, and my wife's a probation parole officer, and my oldest daughter works for the FBI, and she's assigned to an office in Las Vegas. And our youngest daughter, she was making her decision what she wanted to do a couple years ago. She reminded us, she said, I want nothing to do with law enforcement in any way, shape, or form. And she goes to St. Ambrose and is currently starting her first year in occupational therapy. So she kind of diverted and took a different path. But over the last, Dale said, I spent the first 30 years of my career at the Clinton Police Department. Absolutely an amazing career there. Loved every minute of it. You know, a lot of days people talk about law enforcement is not a very popular profession anymore. And it's obvious when we're taking applications. When I applied to become a police officer 36 years ago, I took a test with 270 plus people applying for about 4 positions. And now when we take applications, we get maybe 15 to 20. So it's very disheartening. It's tough to get applicants, and it's still a great job. When I meet with young people, and I think that's one of probably the most important things we do as law enforcement leaders and business leaders. I think as we all look to attract employees and retain employees, when somebody says, hey, can you come and show up at a high school, or would you let a high school student come in and job shadow? 20 years ago, if they weren't 18 years old, you said, no way, they can't be in our building. We can't have them around us. And now we do everything in our power to get these young teenagers in our office to see what we do. And it works out really well because we've had probably in my last 6 years at the Sheriff's Department, we've been able to recruit probably 3 local teenagers to either look at getting into law enforcement, or after they complete their internship and their college career, they come back and let us know they got in law enforcement. Not all of them got law enforcement in Clinton, Iowa, but the fact that we can continue to get our kids in there, it's super, super difficult to recruit and get people to come into this profession. I think one of the most interesting parts about it, when people ask me, what's your favorite part about your job? There is never 2 days that are ever even remotely close to the same. When I wake up in the morning, I have no idea what the day is going to be. Mondays are a little monotonous. There's no board members here, board of supervisors member. Good, I can badmouth them. Every Monday morning, I have to go to their meeting and sit through 2 hours of that. That's how I start my Monday off. I tried to convince them that I could find a different way to spend my first 2 hours of a Monday morning. I had them entertaining changing the date, but I didn't get the job done. So that's how my week starts. But other than on a Monday morning, nothing is the same in law enforcement. And I think that's probably the part that makes it. I've had a lot of people say, how many more years are you going to do it? And my answer has always been, when it's no longer fun, or I'm not being energetic or innovative, then I'll know that the time is done and it's time to move on. But I enjoy it. People say, I kind of shocked. I gave a tour to Citizens Police Academy of the jail the other night, and they had asked, and I say this all the time, people say, well, do you like it? And I say, no, I love it. It's fun. It's a great time. And every morning, and maybe not every morning, that might be a wee bit of a lie, but 98% of the time you get up and it's a great day. It's fun. You go in just because you don't know what's going to happen. And that's what makes the job interesting. It keeps me motivated to keep coming back. I'm in my 36th year. I've been very, very fortunate. Another thing is living in this community my whole life and serving everybody in this community for as many years as I have. I get frustrated when people say,
you know, you read in the paper, you hear people talk about, you know, oh, there's nothing to do in this community, or the naysayers complain about our communities, and, you know, Clinton, Comanche, DeWitt, whatever. There is a lot to do in our communities. And, you know, I think that's probably the toughest thing. You pay me to be out driving around 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, seeing what's going on. And people don't open their eyes if they tell you there's nothing to do in this community, because there is so much good in this community. Now, we may not have, you know, events that draw 100,000 people, but the thing is, we have such a great community. And one of the things that troubles me as your sheriff is we hear a lot of negative, and the media posts so much negativity about communities. And I've had people ask me over the last several years, well, don't you think this neighborhood's dangerous? Or don't you think this area is dangerous? And I'll tell you, having two daughters, there has never been a time in my career where my daughters have come to me and said, Dad, I'm going to go to such and such's house, and here's where they live. I've never said, no, you're not going to go there. That neighborhood's too dangerous. Yes. Do we have crime? Absolutely. Do we see that crime? There's days that certain, I'm going to say, maybe establishments have more calls for service than others. But you know what? We do have a relatively safe community. I'm not going to say that there hasn't been bad things happen, but we can't always, as law enforcement officers, go into the details about the investigation. And that's one of the things that's sad for us. We can't tell you everything that's going on in investigations. So we're reluctant to give all that information out, because we could jeopardize the case. Then the county attorney's yelling at me that we gave too much information out. But you know what? We have a safe community. And for my kids, when I could tell my kids there was no place that I didn't think that they should go, or I wouldn't let them go, I wouldn't let my kids walk down a dark alley at 2 o'clock in the morning, as I wouldn't. That's just a bad decision. But, you know, we have a great community. And I think one of the best parts of my job is I've been paid to drive around, look at every part of this community. First 30 years was strictly in the city of Clinton. The last 6 have been in the entire county. And boy, I'll tell you, we should be thankful for what we have. You know, Rotary, all the good that you do for the community, all the good that all the other organizations bring to this community, all the events that we have, all the hard work that goes in. I'll tell you, there's no better job to get to see it firsthand than what I've had over the last 35 years, and I wouldn't change it for the world. One of the things I want to talk to you about today is mental health, substance abuse. You know, we see a lot in the media right now, and I think that's probably one of the toughest parts of a public safety job. Maybe not just mine, firefighters, EMS, 911 communicators, telecommunicators, is all the mental health and all the stress that we see every day. And I think Rotary's been involved before, or there, I think I've read that you guys maybe have helped some organizations involving mental health. But I'll tell you, that's probably one of the biggest challenges law enforcement officers deal with today, is the mental health in our community. My first year as sheriff, one of the things, and I openly admit, I didn't have a lot of experience in the jail other than bringing people to jail the previous 30 years. I wasn't instrumental in the day-to-day operations of the jail. One of the best decisions I think I made, and you've probably heard me say this before, is when I was able to, and I was fortunate enough to win the election, the first and toughest decision I had to make was who my chief deputy is going to be. And I had to appoint that position. It's not a position that you hire in, it's a position that you appoint. And probably the best decision that I made is I left the chief deputy that I had just ran against in an election as my chief deputy. I had a lot of people question me. They thought I was nuts for doing that. They said, you just ran against this individual. How's he going to have your back? How are you going to trust him? And I said, well, let me worry about that. And honestly, where his strong suit was, maybe was my not such strong suit. And together we've made a great team over the last 6 years. But more importantly, when people ask me why I did that, I said, I think it's important. People look at law enforcement not because we're the smartest, certainly not because we're the best looking, but you know, they want us to make good decisions. We're in a uniform that stands out. We drive squad cars that stand out with our lights and sirens, and people look for us to make good decisions. And I think as the sheriff, one of the best decisions that I made was leaving that individual as a chief deputy, and I stand by that 6 years later. I still think it's one of the best decisions I made. And more so is when I talk to a younger group, and I want people to look at us and they think, well, police officers are supposed to make good decisions, or law enforcement officers. And I think the message that I made that tough decision was, you can run against somebody you can even disagree with somebody, but you don't have to let that affect you. You can still make a good decision, and you can disagree with somebody and still work together with that person. And I live by that decision today, 6 years later. I don't regret it one day. Steve Deesh was the guy that I ran against in the election. Luckily, I won, and I left him in that position. And all those people that first couple of years, I don't know if that was a good decision. I think you might regret that. But I can tell you 6 years later, I don't, because we've worked together so well. And when I talk to a younger group, I try to remind people, just remember, you can disagree, you can argue, you can not even get remotely close on something. But as law enforcement, I think it's so important that we send the message that disagreements don't mean hatred, because we see so much hatred in today's society. I tout myself for making that decision. Don't regret it. I think it's one of the things that have helped me as we move forward. The chief deputy had spent a lot of his career working in the jail, and when I got in there, mental health was one of the toughest things that we deal with. And I'm here today to a little bit. Usually I tell you about all the excitement that's out on the street, all the crazy things that we get to see. I get a lot of conversations about what's the craziest thing you've seen. And there's been a lot of it, believe me, not all good, not all fun. And sometimes, just like the media, that we all want to hear that. But I'll tell you what the saddest is and the hardest to deal with is that mental health. In my first month in the job as sheriff, I'll never forget, the jail administrator called me and said about once a year, we get an incident in the jail that's horrible. And I said, well, let me guess, it's right now in my first year or first couple of months. And it was. And we got down there, and these individuals down there that work in the jail, I tell you, most of you, anybody in here know a corrections officer, whether it's in a jail or a prison? Well, I'll tell you, that is the toughest job. Mine, I get all the glamour, the fun stuff, get to come and talk to everybody. But the real heroes in law enforcement and public safety are the corrections officers and the telecommunicators. And I think that it's sad, and someday I would love to bring up a telecommunicator for you or a corrections officer. They're probably not going to be the most groomed at the microphone, but boy, you want to hear their stories. It's unbelievable. But when I got down in that jail, that individual down in that jail was covered, had covered himself in all types of human bodily fluids, and was in such mental health, poor mental health, that we had to get a court order to treat this individual. And I just don't think people understand how often we're dealing with mental health, both in the jail and out in the street. I can't tell you. I would say, when I first started law enforcement, I would say, and this, we kind of laughed about it back then, alcohol was our job security. There was never a night that alcohol didn't make sure that we kept our jobs. And, there's a lot of funny stories with that. But, the sad part of it now is it's probably mental health and substance abuse that keep law enforcement 100% guaranteed that they're coming back the next day. But it's hard. And not only is it hard on the individuals that you deal with, it's difficult on the officers that are in the field, the firefighters, the EMS. When they get out there and they go to these calls, whether it's suicidal, whether it's attempts at suicide, whether it's just general mental health that has no involvement in suicide at all. And the services out there. I just sat through a meeting this morning at the Board of Supervisors. Much I complain about going, I do listen and learn a lot. The state's decided in their infinite wisdom to change our structure of how we're going to deal with and fund mental health. We had it regionalized. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was helping us. And now they're going to change it again, and we don't know what July 1 is going to bring. But I'll tell you, there's nothing more frustrating as a law enforcement officer when you get out there and somebody's out there talking about taking their lives, overdosing, no reason to live, and there's not enough resources out there to get them the help. We take them to the hospitals. We try to get help at the hospitals, and the nursing staff. I think you said today's national nurses. Again, there's another group of people that don't get enough appreciation. Is our nurses. They do everything they can to get these people help, and we just don't have the resources out there. So as law enforcement, we're responsible for getting them to the hospital when they're in crisis And once we do get them up there, the nurses do everything they can, the doctors do what they can, but there's no facilities out there. And then we're sending these people back out the doors, you know, and wondering why our suicide rate is up. Our mental health issues are through the roof. And it's really, really frustrating from a law enforcement officer's perspective when you get those calls every day. I can't think of a day that goes by that we don't have something to do. 4 to 5 calls. I always say our most prevalent call is probably domestic violence, and then equally now has to do with, you know, mental health or substance abuse. And the families, you know, when you're out there and you're doing everything you can for these individuals that have tried suicide, attempted to commit suicide, they've been committed before, and they're right back out there. It's just a horrible feeling. It's absolutely gut wrenching when you have to go tell somebody that, you know, you may have attempted 3 or 4 times to get a loved one committed. You may have attempted 3 or 4 times to get them the treatment that they need, and it failed. And now you're there delivering a death notification. Absolutely the worst part of the job. And I just can't tell you, even in the jail, when I talk about the corrections officers and what they have to deal with on a daily basis, I'm sure, you know, and I know we're just here eating, so I'm trying to keep this, you know, G-rated, but it's just unbelievable what goes on in a facility like that with mental health. It's pretty sad when I, as the sheriff, have to go out and buy heavy-duty rain coats, rain pants, knee-high boots, helmets, face rubberized material for the face, because people are throwing feces, bodily fluids at the corrections officers when they're going in to try and get them out of the cell, to transport them to medical visits, to take them to prison, to transport them to a different cell. Some of the things that go on in the jail are just unbelievable. And the poor men and women that serve as corrections officers absolutely do not get enough credit for everything that they have to deal with on a daily basis. With that, the substance abuse, I'm sure you know, the way we deal with narcotics, I talk about the mental health, but something that's just as bad and that we see almost probably, depending on the day, some days it could be equal, some days it could be a little more, is substance abuse. And I'm not talking about alcohol. We all deal with, you know, friends that either had too much, but it's not every day that we're dealing with alcohol. But the drug abuse out there that we see on a daily basis is just unbelievable. In my career, I spent probably 4 years working in an undercover narcotics task force, where we dealt with crack cocaine, cocaine, and near the end of my career of narcotics, it was methamphetamine. And those were horrendous drugs. What we saw crack cocaine do to their communities, and then the start of methamphetamine. What we see now is no comparison to that. And you talk about individuals that are completely incoherent, and you cannot get them to comply, to cooperate, is the fentanyl and the stuff, the synthetic drugs that are being manufactured now. Law enforcement officers across the country, we've all had to change the way we used to do what's called a field test. If we dealt with somebody that was on drugs, or we search their pockets, we stick our hands in their pockets before we take them to jail, search them to make sure they don't have contraband on them. And law enforcement officers are now getting, you know, exposed to fentanyl and these other drugs, and losing law enforcement officers' lives as we deal with all the narcotics that are out there. But every day, I can't tell you how sad it is in a day in our life to see the people. And I'm not just talking, drugs don't just affect those that are, you know, economically challenged or have had a poor upbringing. We're dealing with people that have tried drugs one time and their lives have been just turned upside down, that they can't fight the addiction. I've interviewed people that I've known for years and years and years, and to listen to their stories about, you know, how they've tried to fight the addiction and absolutely can't. Many of them didn't survive past the age of 30, and others are out there still fighting that addiction today. But it's just, I'll tell you, if there's an emphasis on something that as a country we need to fight harder on, is mental health and substance abuse, because it consumes so much of our services on a daily basis, not just law enforcement, but fire, EMS, telecommunicators. So it's a huge challenge, but I think when we get out and we continue to get the opportunity to share what we see on a daily basis with different civic groups and different organizations in the community, we tend to get a lot of support and a lot of help. I hope the state and the federal government start making better decisions, and we really focus on things we can do for those individuals out there. And I've had people ask me, Sheriff, what's your opinion on Narcan? Narcan is a drug controlled substance that we can administer to somebody that's overdosed on an opioid. And I've had people ask me, they're like, well, you can't support that because you're out there, saving the life of a drug addict. And in the back of my head, I've had that thought, I've had that conversation with myself several times. How do we go out and administer Narcan to people that have overdosed, intentionally taken that drug and lost their life? But then I say to myself, an addiction, and all the times I've spent working on some of these vigils and committees and stuff, addiction is a disease. And what if that was my child laying out there, versus somebody else's child? Would I want that child, if I'm the first person on the scene? It was a tough decision when they asked us, would we carry Narcan at the sheriff's office? One side of me says it's a conscious decision to overdose on drugs and use that kind of substance. But then I think, if it was anybody in here's son, daughter, mother, brother, sister, would they want me to save them and see if we can't, give them another chance? So it's not an easy decision, but I think it's the right decision anytime we can save. And we're not talking about, a bird in the wild. We're talking about a human being, and that's what you have to think of it as you are dealing with human beings, and you have to do the right thing, and you have to be compassionate. But we see so much of this on a daily basis. It's really it's really trying. And then I'll end it with, as we talk about that, probably the next biggest epidemic that we deal with in public safety is as law enforcement officers now, their mental health. They're seeing so much trauma, so much hate and discontent that right now across this country, one of the biggest challenges law enforcement and fire leaders are dealing with is the suicide of their own men and women that aren't coping with, what goes on out there. And it could be more than just what's going on in their world in law enforcement, their family lives and everything that builds up on them. But you send somebody out there that's having a tough time in their own personal life, trying to help everybody else. It's really, really difficult for those men and women. And some of it's very, very simple. You take it's not because they've been dealing with it for 20 years. You take a 2-year veteran of public safety, law enforcement, and they go out and they see a car accident where there's loss of 2 or 3 children, a house fire where they couldn't rescue somebody and see somebody inside, an overdose of a 20-year-old young adult that didn't make it, and then go home and try and have dinner with your family where you got those images in their head. That stuff compounds over 6 months and even a year. And we as law enforcement have to do a much better job of taking care of our own. We do a good job of trying to work in the community, trying to provide the best service that we can, but then we have forgot about our own over the last 20 or 30 years. And now we're having to work harder to make sure that our men and women go home safe at the end of the day. So any questions? I don't know how long you want me to talk. I could go on. I know Greg's back there asleep. I'm trying to get him wake up now.
So, we've had a chance over the years to sit and visit at different times. You've been at it 36 years. How do you cope with the challenges of staying sane and your mental health?
Spent a lot of time with Dale. Dale, it's having good friends and people. You know what, Greg? All the years that you and I've had conversations, you ask me questions. It's things like that. Unfortunately, I had some really horrific experiences young in my career. I was only a law enforcement officer for about 2 years and watched my partner hit a pole in a car chase at 100 miles an hour and lost his life. And I was right behind him at the time. Had to go tell his wife. They had a baby that was about 8 weeks old and a child that was about 1 year old at 3 a.m. knocking on their door. And I was done. I was like, yep, this isn't for me after that day. And I got some professional help back when I was like 21 years old. And probably the best thing, worst thing ever, but how I got the help at the end helped me cope with those things. And I'll tell you, I was just talking to a group the other day. We were talking about how law enforcement, who's watched the news and the cameraman's panning and they're saying they're at the scene of a double homicide, you know, and you see 3 or 4 officers standing out front of that house, and they're kind of like, I don't want to say they're laughing, but they're not, you know, they kind of got a smile on their face. It's super embarrassing. You're like, geez, you know, to the men and women, even though they're maybe not from my agency, how can you be at the scene of a homicide and ever find anything to laugh or have a smile on your face at? Well, it's a coping mechanism. I probably one of the top 5 worst days of my career. We had an apartment fire at Gateway Apartments. I happened to be one of the first ones on scene, and we lost 3 young lives, like a 12-year-old little girl, about a 6-year-old little girl, and like a 3-year-old little girl. And you know, it was a rough one. I was forced to help carry the deceased young victims out of the house to an ambulance because the firefighters were trying to put out the fire. Had to drive the ambulance with paramedics to get them to the hospital. We lost all 3 of the young kids. And from there, because the radio is normally glued to our shoulder, you know, I get a call to go to a bar fight, and you get to the bar fight and somebody tells you, you know, straight from the hospital with 3 young children dead, to a bar fight where somebody tells you they're going to do this to your mom or your dad or your kid or whatever. You just have to, you have to have friends, you know, that ask you questions. You can't bottle it up. And I think that's what happens nowadays is people tend to bottle it up and they don't have the friends or the outlets. I think it's important and healthy for law enforcement officers to have friends outside of that law enforcement circle, because if that's all you have for your friend network, which cops tend to do, is stay within what makes them feel comfortable, to get out so that people do ask you, you know, how was your day? When citizens, I had a suicide one day, and I think probably one of the 2 things that helped me a lot is a grandmother came home and found her teenage son had committed suicide. And to this day, and I'll never mention the name, and I'll be someplace, whether I was with my wife and kids or whatever, and this grandma will come up and say something to my kids like, you know, your dad was so you know, say something really, really kind about the way you acted on that horrible day. She's remembered that for, even though it was a horrible day, she remembers how we treated her. And it's just kind comments like that that I think help law enforcement, fire, EMS get through those tough days. So there's no good answer to it, but yeah.
Sheriff, you talked about the shift in problems and from traditional crime to mental health. How as an agency have you guys changed your approaches to policing?
You got about 3 hours and I'll just give you it. So one of the craziest things, and you may have heard me talk about this because I don't know who I tell what to. The craziest thing I've ever seen when I got to the sheriff's office was when we arrest somebody, or anybody arrests anybody, they come into jail, and whether you believe people should receive benefits or assistance or whatever, or you don't, it's really irrelevant. When somebody comes to jail, if they're getting any assistance whatsoever, from mental health to housing to whatever, if they're in jail for more than 3 days, we end up notifying the state and federal government, and every ounce of assistance that they get is shut off. And we wonder why we had jail overcrowding and the same people come to jail. When you look at that, well, they went to jail again. I couldn't believe we were shutting off all their benefits, and then they get released a week or 2 later, and we let them out the back door of the law center, out of the jail, and then we wonder why they come back to jail 5 days later, because they've been without medicine, their mental health drugs, their whatever they're on, their assistance for housing, and I couldn't believe it. So what we did is I kind of got in a little bit of trouble. I self-proclaimed I was going to take an office in the courthouse, which I've learned I can't do that anymore. And we opened up what's called a resource center. That asked for permission, I guess they say. We opened up what's called the resource center. So now when we release people from jail, we would just bring them to jail, shut off their benefits, let them out, and hope with no internet, no vehicle, no family support network, no cell phone, no home, that somehow they would miraculously get back on their medication, get treatment, and not end up in jail. Well, it didn't work. So we opened up a resource center, we wrote a grant, and now when somebody gets out of jail, the vast majority of them, there are a few that refuse to go, will go over to the resource center, and we have walls and we've got computers, and we can help them get their driver's license back. We can help them get their benefits turned on, and it's really worked. Those that we still have some that are repeat offenders that just don't want the help, but a lot of them can get out now and get the treatment. They can get their life back in order. That's been a huge benefit to us. There's been some other programs that we do to try and get out and work with people in the community once we know they have more extensive substance abuse problems, our DART team that the city operates on. But the Resource Center has been an amazing tool to get people the help that they need. So, Dave?
What percent is substance abuse, and secondly is jail, substance abuse center? Do people after staying 2 to 3 days get off the drugs? They're better, place to go.
So I don't really know what that percentage is. I'd be tough. I'd be guessing, shooting from the hip if I told you that. And usually 3 days isn't enough. One of the things that we have in the jail, and I'll give credit, some of this started before me. We've just followed through with it. And then there's some things that we've added. But before I took over, they had brought in a mental health advocate that works in the jail. And then we had a nurse assigned to the jail 40 hours a week. And we do get people that want help. And a lot of times they're not willing to get the help unless they are arrested in jail and know that they're going to be there for a little while. Then they want the help. The good thing is we have the resources in there with the nurse. That's another thing I think, Mr. Pillars, that you were talking to as well. We can get them the treatment that they want in there. When they come to us and say, I want help, we've brought in a GED program that just started about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. We've already graduated 3 people out of it. And, and people say, well, that's not a ton. I don't measure success, in miles. I measure it in steps. And to get 3 people that have graduated with a GED while in jail is hopefully 3 people that aren't going to come back to jail. And we've got them connected with Clinton Community College afterwards. A couple of them went on to get into, a trades field. We're able to get them, the band Metallica funds a scholarship for people that are coming out from incarceration, help them get into some sort of trade if there's tuition and things like that. So we've done that. We've brought in peer support groups that have tried to work with people in the jail, more religious services in the jail. And again, it's not perfect, but it's definitely been better than what it has. So, some of these people aren't coming back, and that's our goal. As cops, everybody thinks all we want to do is arrest people and throw them in jail. But as administrators, we have to find ways to do something different. Otherwise, we're just gonna, we could fill a jail every day if all we did is just go out and try and arrest everybody. So, any other? Yeah.
I want to say, number one, I have a lot of respect. Thank you for your service, and always been proud to say that you're a sheriff.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So, and we, as the general public, when we come upon somebody who can tell is struggling, had an incident that happened last weekend. We were helping a neighbor lady with getting some mulch to her backyard. When my boys had driven their truck back in the alley and stuff, and the gentleman was walking down, and he definitely was dealing with something. Trying to swing at people.
Yeah.
And we weren't even close to him. And then the next thing we knew, we walked down the alley, somebody had a couch out that they were getting rid of, and he laid on that. About an hour later, we saw he had all of his book bag items on their front of their car and such. And so we, as the public, should we call your non-emergency? Should we call 911? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I think in that situation, if somebody's walking down the street, swinging at the air, there's not a lot we can do. And let me switch, and I'll come back to that. One of the best things that we're doing as public safety, when we show up as men and women in these uniforms with, and I don't wear a big gun belt like everybody else, with taser and pepper spray and 3 sets of handcuffs and all the gear that goes on a lawn, body cameras and all this gear. When somebody's in a mental health crisis, I can't imagine anybody's like, oh, great. There's 2 cops, because every call like that's going to require 2 officers. I can't imagine anybody in mental health crisis like, oh, great. There's 2 squad cars with red lights on and two men or women out there with all this gear coming to my door, and oh, this is going to work. So one of the things that we've been doing, and I think this was another thing Dave was talking about, is we did a program where we took mental health advocates with us. We put them in our communications center. The Clinton Police Department had started the program, and we were kind of leading Eastern Iowa where we had these advocates riding in squad cars. So instead of us getting out and going to your door, and a lot of times people are like, oh, the cops are here, I'm going to jail, I may as well fight, or I'm going to fight to get away from it. Now we're causing an arrest to happen, and now mental health just turned into a crime because they fought with the police. So what we're doing is making sure that the scenes were safe, and then we'd bring in these advocates and let them talk to the people, and truly was starting to work. It was a philosophy that caught on. As long as we weren't getting them hurt, a lot of them, the advocates were females. And yes, it's a weird feeling when you take a 105-pound female and say, here, you're going to talk to this person that's high on drugs or has a history of mental health, but they've had the training because they don't have the tools to protect themselves like we do on our belt. But they're committed to their profession, and it was really working. And it was called mobile crisis is what it was, but we put them in a squad car, we put them in communications, and unfortunately right now under the new mental health funding that the state's redesigning, and I'm hoping they rethink it, we're going to lose that service because that was probably the best thing that we've done as a community for mental health in a long time. So, but the answer to that is call us, but just remember, it's not illegal just to walk down the road and swing at the air, but if they're physically appear to be harming themselves or a threat to somebody else, it is worth calling. So anything else? Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate having me, Dale, Mary. Thank you very much for inviting me and the wonderful lunch. And I appreciate it.
Bill, as a tradition from our club, we donate a book to the Clinton Public Library in our speaker's name, but I think we're gonna wait till we have a book.
We're gonna just have them sign.
We'll have you sign that. So I don't know the title today.
It's on back order. I do know the title.
Oh,
actually.
let's share the title. But we'll have you sign this and make sure your book gets to the library. And then just a couple thoughts as it relates to the topic. And Bill, I want to say thank you for trusting our club. I know you're among friends here, but it's really important topic matter and really important that you open up to us about this. So thank you for doing that because we're your advocates and your friends. And we want Rotary, I hope I speak for all of us, we want Rotary to be one of those organizations in the community that's really supporting your efforts and supporting the needs in our community. We are fortunate to have many organizations working to resolve substance abuse issues and to promote good mental health and good care, but we thank you for trusting us with that. A couple thoughts as it ties into our organization. We mentioned the district gavel passing. Norland Hinkey, who's a Clinton Rotarian, will be our next district governor, so multiple clubs across the state of Iowa. He has two initiatives that he'll roll out and share with our club. One is tied into a Rotary International initiative with planting trees, so some ecology effort. The other is mental health care and related directly to what you're talking about. So we are committed to supporting you, but we also have a Rotary initiative, so we'll make sure that those things get connected and we can provide support in that way. The second thing I was just going to mention, because it's on my radar really close, but I need to make sure it's on everyone's. And this is probably something you're already well aware of, but for the club's benefit, my sister, Jess, is a nurse manager at the University of Iowa Hospital in adult psychiatric. She's been there like 20 years. So she's an advocate, she's an educator, and she's working in the space, both with inpatient and outpatient care. She sends me, or I'm on their mailing list, the MindSpring Mental Health Alliance, which used to be called NAMI. So there's this statewide organization, and there are a gamut of webinars every single month, and they're completely free, but it's like 1 hour at a time that you can log in on your lunch or whatever hour it's provided. And it's every topic of really understanding mental health. And I think that's on all of our shoulders, is our own self-care and our own mental health, but also understanding some of the issues that hit our family, our neighbors, and our friends. So I'll make sure that that gets shared out.
In the newsletter.
We'll put it in the newsletter. Gosh, Susie, what would we do without Susie here? Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for everything today, and feel free to take the half sheets with the event reminders. And with that, the foundation board meets right after this meeting in the back. Experience the magic of Rotary.
Thank you.
Oh,
it's okay. That's okay.
I was scattered.
Yeah.
Oh, it's.
Yeah, you want to jump.
Absolutely.
I better run back here.
Yeah.